You're making at least 5 of these 15 devastating mistakes that weak men repeat every single day without even realizing it. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor of Rome, observed these exact same patterns of self-sabotage over 1,800 years ago, and he left behind a precise manual on how to escape this trap. The difference between a man who builds a solid future and one who destroys his own chances is hidden in seemingly harmless behaviors that you've probably normalized. The Stoics discovered that weakness isn't about physical strength, but about the daily mental choices we make, and today you're going to discover exactly what those choices are and how to fix them before it's too late. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment what part of the world you're watching from. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. You are here for a reason. Perhaps you feel stuck, unable to move forward, watching as life passes you by while others seem to advance with purpose and strength. Perhaps you look in the mirror and wonder why, despite your efforts, you remain in the same place, repeating the same patterns, making the same mistakes. Or perhaps you simply sense that something within you needs to change, that there is a version of yourself waiting to emerge, a stronger, wiser, more capable version that has been buried under years of weakness, disguised as comfort. The ancient Stoics understood something that modern society has forgotten. They understood that strength is not about physical power or dominance over others. True strength is internal. It is the capacity to govern yourself, to face reality without flinching, to act with virtue regardless of circumstance. And they also understood its opposite. They knew that weakness, real weakness, is not a lack of muscle or force. It is a failure of character. It is the choice, whether conscious or unconscious, to live beneath your potential, to surrender your will to comfort, fear, distraction, and excuse. Tonight, you will discover 15 behaviors that mark the path of weak men. These are not insults meant to wound you. They are mirrors meant to awaken you, because every weak man was once capable of strength. Every man who destroys his future does so not through a single catastrophic decision, but through small daily choices that accumulate like drops of water, eventually carving canyons into the landscape of his life. And if you recognize yourself in these words, do not despair. Recognition is the first step toward transformation. The Stoics taught that we are not victims of our nature, but architects of our character. What you have built through weakness, you can rebuild through strength. Let us begin with the first destructive pattern, one so common that many men do not even recognize it as weakness. They see it as wisdom, as protection, as reasonable caution. But the Stoics would call it by its true name, the refusal to take responsibility. The weak man blames. He blames his parents for his failures, his circumstances for his limitations, his bad luck for his poverty, his genetics for his health, his boss for his career stagnation, his partner for his unhappiness. He constructs an elaborate architecture of excuses, a fortress of justifications that protects him from the one truth he cannot face, that he is responsible for his life. Not for everything that happens to him, the Stoics were clear about this distinction, but for how he responds to what happens, for the choices he makes, for the person he becomes. Epictetus, who was born a slave and rose to become one of history's greatest philosophers, taught his students a fundamental principle. Some things are within our control and some things are not. What is within our control? Our judgments, our desires, our actions, our responses. What is not within our control? Nearly everything else. The weather, the past, other people's opinions, the economy, our birth circumstances, even much of what happens to our bodies. The weak man spends his life fighting against what he cannot control and neglecting what he can. The strong man does the opposite. When you blame others for your situation, you give them power over your future. You declare yourself helpless. You announce to the universe that you are not the author of your life, but merely a character in someone else's story. And the universe, indifferent to your protests, continues on without you. Years pass. Opportunities vanish, and you remain exactly where you were. Justified perhaps, validated in your victimhood perhaps, but unchanged, unimproved, unfulfilled. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the known world, wrote in his private journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." He wrote this not from a place of comfort, but from military camps during plagues, surrounded by betrayal and loss. If a man bearing the weight of an empire could take responsibility for his inner world while acknowledging the chaos of the outer world, what excuse do you have? The second pattern of weakness follows naturally from the first. The weak man seeks constant validation from others. He cannot move, cannot decide, cannot act until he has received permission, approval, encouragement from the crowd. His sense of worth is entirely external. He checks his value like checking the weather, looking outside himself to see if today he is acceptable, today he is worthy, today he is enough. And because the crowd is fickle, because opinions shift like sand, because no amount of external validation ever fills an internal void, he spends his entire life in a state of anxious performance, always auditioning, never at peace. The Stoics would ask him a simple question: whose opinion matters? If you live for the approval of others, which others? All of them. That is impossible. They contradict each other. Some will praise what others condemn, some will love what others hate. So which voice do you follow? And why does that voice have authority over your life? Did they earn it? Are they wise? Are they living the life you want to live? Or are they simply loud? Seneca, advisor to emperors and one of the wealthiest men in Rome, wrote extensively about the trap of living for reputation. He observed that most men are enslaved by the opinions of people they do not even respect. They sacrifice their days, their health, their peace, their integrity, all to win applause from an audience that will forget them the moment they leave the stage. He watched men destroy themselves pursuing fame, only to discover that fame is a burden, not a reward, that it brings scrutiny and envy and expectation, but rarely brings peace. The strong man builds an internal compass. He defines his own values, drawn from wisdom, from philosophy, from observation of what truly matters. And then he navigates by that compass regardless of the winds of public opinion. He does not ignore feedback. He is not arrogant, but he filters feedback through his principles. He asks, is this criticism true? Is it useful? Does it help me become more virtuous, more capable, more aligned with my values? If yes, he integrates it. If no, he releases it without anger, without defense, without the need to convince his critic. He simply continues on his path. When you live for the approval of others, you give them the pen with which your life is written. When you reclaim that pen, when you become the author of your own story, guided by principles rather than popularity, you discover a freedom that no amount of praise could ever provide. You discover that you can be at peace even when misunderstood, even when criticized, even when alone. Because you are not alone. You are with yourself. And you have become someone whose company you can tolerate, even enjoy. The third destructive pattern is closely related but distinct. The weak man lives in the past. He replays old failures like a broken record, reviewing what he should have said, what he should have done, how things should have been different, or he idealizes the past, convinced that his best days are behind him, that he has already peaked, that nothing ahead can match what came before. Either way, he is not here. He is not present. He is haunting his own life like a ghost, visible but not really alive. The Stoics had a keen understanding of time. They recognized that the past is gone, completely and irrevocably gone. It exists now only as memory, as story, as interpretation. You cannot change it. You cannot fix it. You cannot return to it. And yet, how much of your mental energy do you spend there? How many hours do you lose each week to regret, to resentment, to nostalgia, to the rehearsal of old arguments and old wounds? The past is a graveyard. You can visit occasionally to learn from what is buried there, but you cannot live there. Those who try become ghosts themselves. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, confine yourself to the present. He understood that the present moment is the only place where life actually happens, the only place where you can act, where you can choose, where you can change. The past is information, the future is possibility, but the present is reality, and reality is where power lives. When you dwell in the past, you rob yourself of the present. You miss the opportunity in front of you because you are staring behind you. You fail to see the person who needs your attention, the chance that is arising, the lesson that is being offered, all because you are busy replaying scenes from a movie that has already ended. And time, indifferent to your distraction, continues its march. Days become weeks, become years, and suddenly you realize that you have spent half your life mourning the other half. The strong man learns from the past but lives in the present. He extracts the lessons. This worked. This did not. This was wisdom. This was foolishness. This I will repeat. This I will avoid. He takes the learning and leaves the rest. He does not carry the past like a chain around his neck. He carries it like seeds in his pocket, ready to plant in the present moment when the soil is right. This brings us to the fourth pattern, one that may sting because it is so common, so normalized, so accepted that many men do not recognize it as weakness at all. The weak man avoids discomfort at all costs. He has organized his entire life around comfort, around ease, around the path of least resistance. And in doing so, he has guaranteed his own stagnation because growth lives on the other side of discomfort. Strength is built through resistance. Character is forged in the fire of challenge. And the man who avoids all discomfort avoids all growth. Modern life enables this weakness. You can order food to your door so you never have to cook. You can swipe through entertainment so you never have to be bored. You can avoid difficult conversations by hiding behind screens. You can medicate every uncomfortable emotion with distraction, with substances, with the endless scroll. And all of it, every single convenience, every comfort, every innovation designed to make life easier carries a hidden cost. It weakens you, it softens you, it makes you less capable of handling the inevitable difficulties that life will throw at you. The Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort. They deliberately subjected themselves to cold, to hunger, to simplicity, not out of masochism, but out of wisdom. They understood that comfort is seductive. It whispers, "Stay here, do not risk, do not try, do not push yourself." And if you listen to that whisper for too long, you wake up one day to discover that you have become weak, that you lack resilience, that you cannot handle stress or setback or challenge. You have become fragile. Seneca recommended regularly practicing poverty. Not because poverty is good, but because the fear of poverty controls many men. They stay in jobs they hate, in relationships that diminish them, in situations that kill their spirit, all because they are afraid of losing comfort, losing security, losing the soft life they have built. But when you practice discomfort voluntarily, when you sleep on the floor occasionally, when you fast, when you take cold showers, when you say no to convenience, you prove to yourself that you can handle discomfort, and that proof liberates you. It removes the fear. It shows you that comfort is not necessary for survival, for happiness, for peace. The strong man befriends discomfort. He understands that the gym is uncomfortable, but it builds his body. Difficult conversations are uncomfortable, but they build his relationships. Discipline is uncomfortable, but it builds his life. Facing his fears is uncomfortable, but it builds his courage. He does not seek suffering for its own sake, but he does not run from necessary discomfort. He walks toward it, knowing that on the other side is the person he wishes to become. The fifth pattern of weakness is perhaps the most subtle and therefore the most dangerous. The weak man is controlled by his desires. He believes he is free because he can pursue any pleasure, buy any product, consume any content. But freedom is not the ability to satisfy every urge. That is slavery. True freedom is the ability to choose which urges to satisfy and which to transcend. The weak man has no such ability. He is a puppet, and his desires are the strings. Epictetus taught that we should examine our desires carefully. Ask yourself, is this desire natural and necessary, natural and unnecessary, unnatural and unnecessary? Food, when you are hungry, is natural and necessary. Gourmet food, when you are already full, is natural but unnecessary. The approval of strangers on social media is neither natural nor necessary. Yet how much of your life is organized around that last category? How many hours do you sacrifice to desires that serve no real purpose, that contribute nothing to your flourishing, that actually undermine your well-being? The weak man is addicted, maybe not to substances, though often that too, but definitely to stimulation, to novelty, to pleasure, to escape. He cannot sit with himself in silence. He cannot endure boredom. He cannot resist the urge to check his phone, to seek entertainment, to numb whatever discomfort arises. And this addiction, socially acceptable as it may be, destroys his future just as surely as any drug. It destroys his attention span, making deep work impossible. It destroys his patience, making relationships difficult. It destroys his willpower, making discipline impossible. He becomes a pleasure-seeking machine, always hungry, never satisfied. The Stoics distinguished between pleasure and virtue. Pleasure is fine, they said, but it is not the goal. Virtue is the goal, and virtue often requires saying no to pleasure. It requires delaying gratification. It requires enduring discomfort in service of a higher purpose. The strong man has desires, but he is not controlled by them. He can want something and still choose not to pursue it. He can feel an urge and still act contrary to it. This is power. This is freedom. This is what separates the mature man from the impulsive boy. The sixth pattern of weakness flows directly from the fifth. but it deserves its own examination because it manifests in ways that many men mistake for strength. The weak man lacks discipline. He has grand visions, ambitious goals, inspiring dreams. He talks about what he will do, who he will become, what he will achieve. But when the alarm goes off in the morning, he hits snooze. When the choice arrives between the easy path and the right path, he chooses ease. When no one is watching, when accountability disappears, his behavior changes completely. His private self betrays his public declarations. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do? He wrote this as emperor, a man who could have stayed in bed, who could have delegated, who could have chosen comfort at every turn. Yet he rose, he did his duty, he practiced discipline not because circumstances forced him, but because his principles demanded it. Discipline is not punishment, it is not restriction, it is liberation. The weak man sees discipline as a burden, as something that prevents him from enjoying life. But the strong man understands that discipline is what makes enjoyment possible. Without discipline, you remain enslaved to your impulses, tossed around by every desire, every mood, every circumstance. With discipline, you become the master of your time, your attention, your energy. You become capable of sustained effort. You become capable of building something meaningful. Consider the undisciplined man. He wants to be healthy, but he does not exercise consistently. He wants to be financially secure, but he does not budget or save. He wants deep relationships, but he does not invest time and effort into them. He wants to learn, to grow, to develop skills, but he does not study, practice, or persist through difficulty. He wants the outcomes without the inputs. He wants the harvest without the planting, the watering, the weeding. And life, indifferent to his wants, gives him nothing. The disciplined man makes a different trade. He trades short-term comfort for long-term results. He wakes early, not because it feels good, but because it gives him control over his day. He exercises not because it is fun, but because it builds his strength. He reads not because it is entertaining, but because it expands his mind. He practices his craft not because he feels inspired, but because mastery requires repetition. And slowly, through accumulated daily actions, he builds a life that the undisciplined man can only dream about. Discipline compounds. This is what the weak man fails to understand. He sees discipline as a one-time effort. I will be disciplined today. But that is not discipline. That is motivation, which is fleeting. Discipline is the system, the routine, the commitment that persists regardless of mood or circumstance. It is doing what needs to be done whether you feel like it or not. And when you practice this consistently, when you choose discipline day after day, something remarkable happens. It becomes easier, not because the actions become less difficult, but because you become stronger. Your capacity increases. What once required immense willpower becomes habitual. What once felt impossible becomes normal. The seventh pattern of weakness is fear of failure. The weak man is paralyzed by the possibility of failing. He does not attempt what he cannot guarantee. He does not risk looking foolish. He does not put himself in situations where he might fall short. And in protecting himself from failure, he guarantees a different kind of failure, the failure to ever discover what he was capable of, the failure to live fully, the failure to test himself against the world and see what he is made of. The Stoics embraced a different relationship with failure. They understood that failure is information, it is feedback, it is the universe teaching you what works and what does not. Epictetus taught his students to examine their actions without attachment to outcomes. Did you act with virtue? Did you do what was within your control to do? Then you succeeded, regardless of the result. Did you compromise your principles? Did you neglect what was within your power? Then you failed, regardless of the result. This is a radical reframing. In the common view, failure means not getting what you wanted. In the Stoic view, failure means betraying your values. External success or failure is largely outside your control. You can do everything right and still lose. You can play perfectly and still be defeated by circumstances. But internal success, the success of character, of effort, of integrity, that is entirely within your control. And that is the only success that matters. The weak man avoids starting the business because it might fail. The strong man starts the business, learns from the failure, and starts another. The weak man avoids asking for the relationship because he might be rejected. The strong man asks, gets rejected, and asks again, knowing that rejection is simply part of the process. The weak man avoids the challenge because he might not be good enough. The strong man takes on the challenge specifically because he is not yet good enough, because he knows that is how he will become good enough. Fear of failure keeps more men trapped in mediocrity than actual failure ever could, because failure is temporary. You fail, you learn, you adjust, you try again. But fear is permanent if you let it be. It sits on your chest every morning, whispering that you should not try, that you should stay safe, that you should protect yourself from disappointment. And if you listen to that voice, you will reach the end of your life having never failed, but also having never truly lived. You will be safe, but you will be small. You will be protected, but you will be unfulfilled. The eighth destructive pattern is the weak man's tendency to seek shortcuts. He wants the result without the process. He wants the transformation without the effort. He looks for the hack, the trick, the secret, the quick fix. He buys the course that promises wealth in 30 days. He tries the diet that guarantees weight loss with no exercise. He reads the book that claims to teach him in a weekend what masters spent decades learning. And when these shortcuts inevitably fail, when the weight returns, when the money does not appear, when the skill remains unlearned, he does not question the premise. He simply looks for a different shortcut. The Stoics would call this self-deception. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality. The weak man imagines that somewhere there exists an easy path to the life he wants. He imagines that other people have found this path, that they possess some secret he lacks. And this imagination prevents him from accepting the simple, unglamorous truth: there are no shortcuts. There is only work. Consistent, patient, persistent work. Every master was once a beginner. Every strong man was once weak. Every wise man was once ignorant. The difference is not that they found a shortcut. The difference is that they committed to the long path. They accepted that mastery takes time. They understood that transformation happens slowly, through accumulated effort, through repeated practice, through small improvements compounded over months and years. They did not look for the easy way. They simply stayed on the path. The weak man plants seeds today and digs them up tomorrow to check if they have grown. The strong man plants seeds and trusts the process. He waters them, he protects them, he tends the soil, and he waits patiently, knowing that growth follows natural law, not human impatience. He understands that you cannot rush a harvest. You can only do the work and allow time to do its work. This pattern of seeking shortcuts destroys futures because it prevents the weak man from ever committing fully to anything. He starts the journey, discovers it is difficult, and looks for an easier journey. He begins the practice, finds it challenging, and searches for a simpler practice. He never stays long enough to gain momentum, to break through, to develop real competence. He is always a beginner, always starting over, always disappointed, never understanding that the disappointment comes not from the difficulty of the path, but from his refusal to walk it. The ninth pattern is living for others' approval, which we touched on earlier but must examine more deeply. The weak man has outsourced his self-worth. He determines his value by measuring the reactions of others. If they praise him, he feels worthy. If they criticize him, he feels worthless. If they ignore him, he feels invisible. His emotional state is entirely dependent on external validation, which means his emotional state is completely out of his control. This is exhausting. It is a performance that never ends. He must constantly monitor how he is being perceived. He must manage his image. He must say what people want to hear, do what people expect, be who people need him to be, and in the process, he loses himself. He becomes a collection of masks, each one carefully crafted for a different audience, none of them authentic, all of them exhausting to maintain. The Stoics taught that the opinion of the masses is worthless, not because people are worthless, but because the crowd has no consistent principles. Today they celebrate you, tomorrow they condemn you, today they follow you, tomorrow they forget you. Your value to them is determined by utility, by entertainment, by what you can provide. The moment you stop providing it, their attention moves elsewhere. So why would you base your sense of worth on something so unstable? Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, which means he lived constantly under scrutiny. Everything he did was observed, judged, discussed, criticized, and yet in his private writings he reminded himself over and over, do not worry about what others think. Focus on what is right. Act with virtue. The rest is external, and externals cannot harm you unless you allow them to. The strong man builds his worth from within. He defines his values and lives according to them. When he succeeds by his own standards, he feels satisfaction. When he falls short, he feels disappointment. But neither feeling is dependent on external validation. He can receive praise and remain humble because he knows the praise does not define him. He can receive criticism and remain steady because he knows the criticism does not diminish him. He is grounded in something deeper than opinion. This does not mean he ignores all feedback. The wise man listens to criticism from those he respects, from those who have demonstrated wisdom, from those who want his growth, but he filters this feedback through his principles. He asks, is this helping me become more virtuous, more capable, more aligned with my values? If yes, he receives it gratefully. If no, he releases it without anger. He does not need to defend himself, to argue, to convince others. He simply continues on his path, knowing that his worth is not subject to their vote. The 10th pattern of weakness is avoiding difficult conversations. The weak man is conflict-averse, not from a place of peace, but from a place of fear. He does not want to upset anyone. He does not want to be uncomfortable. He does not want to risk the relationship, the approval, the harmony. So he says nothing. He swallows his truth. He allows resentment to build, problems to fester, misunderstandings to calcify. And he calls this weakness peace, but it is not peace. It is cowardice disguised as kindness. True peace comes from honesty, from addressing problems when they are small, from saying what needs to be said with respect and clarity. False peace comes from avoidance, and it is always temporary. The issues do not disappear because you refuse to address them. They grow, they spread. They poison the relationship from within until one day the relationship explodes or dies, and you wonder what happened, not realizing that your silence was the assassin. The Stoics valued truth above comfort. They believed in speaking plainly, acting honorably, addressing issues directly. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone." The harm is to persist in one's own self-deception and ignorance. The truth may be uncomfortable, but it is necessary for growth, for trust, for genuine connection. The weak man protects comfort at the expense of truth. The strong man protects truth, understanding that temporary discomfort leads to lasting peace. He has the difficult conversation, he addresses the problem, he speaks his truth with respect. And yes, sometimes this causes conflict. Sometimes the other person gets upset, sometimes the relationship changes, but at least it is honest, at least it is real, at least both people know where they stand. When you avoid difficult conversations, you disrespect both yourself and the other person. You disrespect yourself by denying your own truth, by teaching yourself that your voice does not matter, that your needs are not important, that you should disappear to make others comfortable. And you disrespect the other person by lying to them, by pretending everything is fine when it is not, by denying them the opportunity to understand you, to address the issue, to grow from the feedback. The 11th pattern of weakness is the neglect of personal growth. The weak man stops learning. He reaches a certain level of competence, a certain level of comfort, and he stops. He stops reading, he stops challenging himself, he stops seeking new experiences, new skills, new perspectives. He declares himself finished, as if growth were a destination rather than a direction, as if he could somehow arrive at a final form and remain there forever. But life does not allow stagnation. You are either growing or dying. There is no static state. The world changes, technology evolves, culture shifts, new challenges arise, and the man who stopped growing 10 years ago wakes up one day to discover he is obsolete. His skills are outdated, his thinking is rigid, his worldview is narrow. He has become the old man who complains that everything was better in his time, not realizing that his time is over because he chose to stop evolving. The Stoics were lifelong learners. Seneca, in his 60s, still studied philosophy daily. Marcus Aurelius, leading an empire, still took time each morning to review Stoic principles. Epictetus taught his students until the end of his life. They understood that wisdom is not achieved once and retained forever. It must be practiced, refined, deepened. They understood that the moment you stop growing, you start shrinking. The strong man maintains a learning posture throughout his life. He reads widely, he seeks mentors, he tries new things, he travels not just geographically but intellectually and spiritually. He exposes himself to different ideas, different people, different ways of being. He questions his assumptions, he tests his beliefs. He allows himself to be wrong, to change his mind, to discover that what he thought was true is not. This is not weakness, this is strength, this is the willingness to evolve. Personal growth requires humility. You must acknowledge that you do not know everything, that you have not figured everything out, that you still have room to improve. The weak man's ego cannot tolerate this acknowledgement. He needs to believe he is already complete, already correct, already sufficient. So he closes himself off from growth. He defends his current position rather than exploring new territory. He becomes smaller each year, more rigid, more fragile, more afraid of anything that might challenge his carefully constructed self-image. The 12th destructive pattern is being a slave to comfort. We touched on this earlier when discussing the avoidance of discomfort, but it warrants deeper exploration because comfort is perhaps the most insidious destroyer of potential in the modern world. The weak man organizes his entire life around minimizing discomfort. He chooses the job not because it aligns with his purpose, but because it is easy, stable, undemanding. He chooses the relationship not because it challenges him to grow, but because it requires little effort. He chooses his daily habits not based on what will build the life he wants, but based on what feels good in the moment. And what is the result? A life of numbing mediocrity. A life where nothing particularly bad happens, but nothing particularly good happens either. A life of safety and comfort and soul-crushing boredom. The weak man reaches 40, 50, 60 and realizes he has never really lived. He has existed, survived, maintained comfort, but he has never tested himself, never pushed his limits, never discovered what he was truly capable of. The Stoics warned against this. Seneca wrote extensively about the dangers of excessive comfort. He observed that comfortable men become soft, and soft men cannot handle the inevitable difficulties of life. When challenge arrives, and it always arrives, the man who has lived in comfort is unprepared. He breaks, he panics, he collapses, because he has no resilience, no strength, no experience navigating discomfort. The strong man voluntarily chooses discomfort. He chooses the workout that pushes him to his limit. He chooses the project that stretches his abilities. He chooses the conversation that requires vulnerability. He chooses the fast over the feast, the early morning over the extra sleep, the difficult right over the easy wrong, not because he enjoys suffering, but because he understands that comfort is a seductive poison. A little bit is necessary, but too much will kill you, not quickly but slowly, by making you weak, soft, incapable. Think about nature. Every creature that evolves in comfort becomes vulnerable. The species that have no predators, no challenges, no need to adapt, they become fragile, they lose their edge. And when the environment changes, when challenge returns, they die off. The same principle applies to humans. When you live in constant comfort, you lose your edge, you lose your resilience, you lose your ability to handle stress, uncertainty, difficulty. And modern life provides more comfort than any previous generation has known, which means modern men are softer, weaker, more fragile than their ancestors. This is not about romanticizing the past or claiming that difficulty is always good. It is about recognizing that your strength is built through resistance, your character is forged through challenge, and your capacity to handle life's difficulties is developed by voluntarily facing difficulties. If you avoid all discomfort, you guarantee that when real difficulty arrives, and it will, you will be unprepared. The 13th pattern is reacting instead of responding. The weak man is reactive. Someone cuts him off in traffic, and he explodes in rage. Someone criticizes him, and he becomes defensive. Something does not go according to plan, and he falls apart. He is like a puppet, and circumstances are the strings. Whatever happens around him determines what happens within him. He has no space between stimulus and response, no pause, no choice. He is controlled entirely by external events. This is perhaps the clearest sign of weakness, because if you cannot control your reactions, you do not control your life. You are at the mercy of the world, tossed around by every event, every comment, every inconvenience, and the world, indifferent to your peace, will provide endless opportunities for reaction. Traffic will be slow, people will be rude, plans will fall through, technology will malfunction. If you react to all of it, you will live in a constant state of agitation, never at peace, never in control. The Stoics focused intensely on this distinction between reacting and responding. Epictetus taught, "It is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things." An event happens. That event is neutral. Your interpretation of the event, your judgment about what it means, your reaction to it, that is where the disturbance comes from, and that is within your control. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps, echoed this Stoic wisdom when he wrote, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." The strong man cultivates this space. He practices the pause. Something happens, and before he reacts, he breathes. He observes. He asks, "What is actually happening here? What does this mean? How do I want to respond? What response aligns with my values?" This practice transforms everything. The person who cut you off in traffic becomes not an enemy, but simply someone in a hurry, perhaps dealing with an emergency. The criticism you received becomes not an attack, but feedback you can examine for truth. The failed plan becomes not a disaster, but an opportunity to adapt. None of the external circumstances changed, but your internal experience changed completely because you chose your response rather than defaulting to reaction. The reactive man is exhausted. His day is a series of emotional spikes and crashes, determined entirely by what happens to him. The responsive man is steady. His day has its challenges, but he meets them from a place of centeredness. He chooses his emotions. He chooses his actions. He is not controlled by circumstances. He responds to them with wisdom, with patience, with virtue. The 14th pattern of weakness is not controlling his thoughts. The weak man is tyrannized by his own mind. His thoughts run wild, unchecked, undisciplined. He thinks whatever he thinks, believes whatever he believes, follows whatever mental pattern has been established by habit, by culture, by past experience. He does not examine his thoughts. He does not question them. He simply accepts them as reality, as truth, as inevitable. But thoughts are not reality. They are interpretations of reality. They are stories you tell yourself about what things mean. And most of these stories, if you actually examine them, are not true. They are biased, distorted, exaggerated, catastrophized. They are products of fear, of conditioning, of cognitive shortcuts. And if you believe all of them, if you do not develop the capacity to observe your thoughts rather than being possessed by them, you will suffer unnecessarily. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." This is the core of Stoic practice. Your mind is your domain. Your thoughts are within your control. Not every thought that arises, you cannot stop thoughts from appearing, but which thoughts you feed, which you believe, which you act on, that is entirely your choice. And this choice determines the quality of your life. The weak man thinks, "I am not good enough." And he believes it. He does not question it. He does not ask, "Is this true? Where did this belief come from? Is it serving me?" He simply accepts it as fact and lives accordingly. The strong man has the same thought, but he observes it. He says, "I notice I am thinking I am not good enough. Interesting. Is that true? In what areas? Compared to whom? And if it is true, what can I do about it?" He engages with the thought rather than being captured by it. This is mental discipline. This is the practice of governing your inner world, and it requires training, just like physical discipline. You must develop the habit of watching your thoughts, of questioning them, of choosing which to keep and which to release. The untrained mind is like an untrained dog. It runs everywhere, chases everything, responds to every stimulus. The trained mind is like a trained dog. It still has energy, still has instincts, but it responds to your direction. It sits when you tell it to sit. Most men never train their minds. They live their entire lives at the mercy of whatever thoughts happen to arise, and then they wonder why they are anxious, depressed, angry, scattered. They wonder why they cannot focus, cannot achieve their goals, cannot find peace. The answer is simple. They have not taken control of their minds. They are passengers in their own consciousness, watching helplessly as their thoughts drive them wherever they will. The 15th and final pattern that destroys the futures of weak men is perhaps the most tragic because it encompasses all the others. others. The weak man does not take action. He thinks about acting. He plans to act. He talks about acting. He waits for the perfect moment to act, for the perfect circumstances, for the perfect level of readiness. And while he waits, while he prepares, while he thinks and plans and talks, his life passes by. Years disappear. Opportunities vanish. And he remains exactly where he was, full of potential, full of dreams, full of someday, but empty of results, empty of progress, empty of the life he claims to want. The Stoics were philosophers, yes, but they were also men of action. Marcus Aurelius did not just think about virtue, he ruled an empire according to Stoic principles. Epictetus did not just teach about freedom, he lived it, even as a slave. Seneca did not just write about wisdom, he advised emperors and navigated the treacherous politics of Rome. They understood that philosophy without action is worthless. Knowledge without application is vanity. Understanding without implementation is self-deception. Epictetus told his students, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." He understood that the world does not care about your intentions, your plans, your potential. The world responds to your actions. You are what you do, not what you think, not what you intend, not what you plan someday to do. You are the sum of your actions, repeated over time. And if your actions do not align with your stated values, then your stated values are lies you tell yourself. The weak man is full of excuses for inaction. He is waiting for more information. He is not ready yet. He does not have enough money, enough time, enough support, enough confidence. He will start after this happens, after that changes, after he feels more prepared. But the truth is simpler and harsher. He is afraid. He is afraid of failure, of judgment, of discomfort, of discovering that he is not as capable as he imagined. So he hides behind preparation, behind planning, behind the endless consumption of information that feels like progress, but is actually procrastination. The strong man understands that you learn by doing. You do not become confident and then act. You act, and through action you build confidence. You do not become skilled and then practice. You practice, and through practice you become skilled. You do not feel ready and then start. You start, and through starting you become ready. Action is both the means and the end. It is how you develop, how you discover, how you transform. Consider two men with the same goal, to build a business. The weak man spends 2 years reading books about business, taking courses, perfecting his business plan, waiting until he has figured everything out. The strong man spends 2 weeks on basic research and then launches. His first attempt is imperfect. He makes mistakes. He learns. He adjusts. He tries again. After 2 years, the weak man is still preparing, still reading, still planning. The strong man has failed 3 times, learned from each failure, and is now running a successful business. Who was wiser? The bias toward action does not mean recklessness. It does not mean acting without thought. It means understanding that most thinking should be followed quickly by action, that most planning should be minimal, that most preparation should be just enough to start, not to guarantee success. Because you cannot guarantee success. Success comes from iteration, from learning by doing, from adjusting based on feedback from reality, rather than from speculation. The paralysis of analysis is a form of cowardice. You stay in your head because your head is safe. You can control your thoughts. You can construct perfect scenarios. You can imagine success without risking failure, but none of it is real. You are living in a fantasy, and while that fantasy may be more comfortable than reality, it will never be more satisfying. Because deep down, you know you are hiding. You know you are afraid. You know you are not actually living your life but simulating it, and that knowledge corrodes your self-respect. The strong man feels the fear and acts anyway. He acknowledges the uncertainty and moves forward. He recognizes that he is not ready, but starts regardless, trusting that he will figure it out along the way. And this trust is not blind faith. It is based on experience, on the repeated proof that humans are adaptable, that you learn faster when the stakes are real, that you discover capabilities you did not know you had when you are actually doing the thing rather than thinking about doing the thing. Now you have seen all 15 patterns. The weak man blames others for his circumstances. He seeks constant validation. He lives in the past. He avoids discomfort. He is controlled by his desires. He lacks discipline. He fears failure. He seeks shortcuts. He lives for others' approval. He avoids difficult conversations. He neglects personal growth. He is a slave to comfort. He reacts instead of responds. He does not control his thoughts. He does not take action. Look at this list carefully. Look without judgment, without defense. Simply observe. Which of these patterns do you recognize in yourself? You do not need to see all 15. Even one of these patterns repeated consistently over time is enough to destroy your future. Because these patterns compound, they reinforce each other. The man who avoids discomfort also fears failure, which leads him to seek shortcuts, which causes him to lack discipline, which means he does not take action. One weakness creates the conditions for another. They form a web that traps you, that keeps you stuck, that ensures you remain weak. But here is the truth that the Stoics understood and that you must understand. These patterns are not your nature. They are your habits, and habits can be changed. You were not born weak. You learned weakness, which means you can unlearn it. You can build new patterns, new habits, new ways of being. The strong man you want to become is not a different person. He is you, with different habits. He is you, having made different choices repeatedly over time. He is you, transformed through practice. This transformation does not happen overnight. The Stoics were not offering quick fixes or miracle cures. They were offering a path, a daily practice, a way of life that, if followed consistently, would make you stronger, wiser, more capable. They were offering a philosophy that has survived 2,000 years because it works, because it addresses the fundamental challenges of being human, because it provides practical tools for building character. Imagine yourself 1 year from now. Imagine that you have spent the next 12 months working on just one of these patterns. Pick the one that resonates most strongly, the one where you know in your bones that this is holding you back. Maybe it is the lack of discipline. Maybe it is living for others' approval. Maybe it is avoiding difficult conversations. Whatever it is, imagine that you have spent a year deliberately working on this, daily, with focus and commitment. How different would your life be? How much stronger would you feel? How much more progress would you have made toward the life you actually want? Now imagine 5 years, 10 years. Imagine what becomes possible when you systematically address these patterns of weakness and replace them with patterns of strength. Imagine the man you would become. That man is not a fantasy. He is not impossible. He is simply on the other side of choice, repeated over time. He is the natural result of different daily actions, different daily thoughts, different daily commitments. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." This is the essence of the Stoic approach. Stop theorizing, stop planning, stop waiting. Start now, start today. Start with one pattern, one habit, one choice. Take responsibility for your life. Stop seeking validation. Let go of the past. Embrace discomfort. Control your desires. Build discipline. Accept failure as feedback. Reject shortcuts. Define your own values. Have the hard conversations. Commit to growth. Choose challenge over comfort. Respond instead of react. Master your thoughts. Take action. Each of these is a practice, not a one-time decision, but a daily commitment. And the beautiful thing about practices is that they become easier with repetition. The first time you take responsibility instead of blaming, it feels difficult, uncomfortable, maybe even painful. But the 10th time is easier. The 100th time it is natural. The 1000th time it is who you are. You have become the kind of man who takes responsibility, not through a dramatic transformation, but through repetition, through choosing the same right action over and over until it becomes your default. This is how character is built, not through grand gestures or heroic moments, though those have their place, but through small daily choices that compound over time. The weak man looks for the big moment, the dramatic change, the sudden transformation. The strong man understands that transformation is boring. It is showing up every day. It is doing the work when no one is watching. It is staying consistent when you do not feel motivated. It is choosing the right action even when the wrong action would be easier. And here is what happens when you do this. You build self-respect, not self-esteem, which is often based on external validation or on comparing yourself to others, but self-respect, which is based on keeping promises to yourself. Every time you say you will do something and then do it, you build self-respect. Every time you identify a pattern you want to change and then actually change it, you build self-respect. Every time you act in alignment with your values, despite difficulty or temptation, you build self-respect. And self-respect is the foundation of a strong life, because when you respect yourself, you do not need the validation of others. When you respect yourself, you do not settle for less than you deserve. When you respect yourself, you do not tolerate behavior in yourself that undermines your goals. When you respect yourself, you do not make excuses or blame others or hide from challenges. You show up, you do the work, you face what needs to be faced. You become the kind of man you would look up to. The Stoics called this living in accordance with nature, specifically with your nature as a rational being. You have the capacity for reason, for choice, for virtue. When you exercise these capacities, when you use your reason to guide your actions, when you make conscious choices rather than defaulting to habit or impulse, when you act with virtue regardless of circumstance, you fulfill your nature. You become what you were meant to be. Not what society tells you to be, not what your parents expected, not what your friends think, but what you, at your highest and best, are capable of being. This is not about perfection. The Stoics did not expect perfection. Marcus Aurelius, the greatest Stoic emperor, made mistakes. He wrote about his struggles, his failures, his ongoing battle with his own weaknesses. But he kept practicing. He kept choosing. He kept returning to his principles every morning, reminding himself what mattered, what kind of man he wanted to be, how he wanted to meet the day's challenges. And through this daily practice, he became one of history's most respected leaders and philosophers. You can do the same. Not become emperor necessarily, but become the strongest version of yourself. Not perfect, but constantly improving. Not without weakness, but refusing to be defined by weakness. Not without challenges, but growing through them rather than being diminished by them. Let us go deeper into what this transformation actually looks like in practice. Because it is one thing to understand these 15 patterns intellectually, and another thing entirely to uproot them from your life and replace them with strength. The gap between knowing and doing is where most men fail. They understand the problem, they see their patterns clearly, they agree that change is necessary, and then they do nothing, or they try for a few days and give up, or they make surface-level changes while the deep patterns remain untouched. The Stoics understood this gap. They knew that philosophy without practice is useless. So they developed specific exercises, specific practices, specific daily rituals designed to close the gap between understanding and embodiment. These were not theoretical exercises. These were practical tools for transforming character, and they work if you actually use them. The first practice is the morning meditation. Marcus Aurelius started every day by reminding himself of Stoic principles. He would sit quietly and reflect. What challenges will I face today? What kind of man do I want to be? What principles will guide my actions? He would prepare his mind, not by planning every detail, but by anchoring himself in his values. This practice ensured that he began each day intentionally rather than reactively, as the director of his day rather than as a passenger. You can adopt this practice. Before you check your phone, before you engage with the world, before you allow external demands to flood your consciousness, spend 10 minutes in quiet reflection. Review your values. Consider what matters most to you. Think about the man you are trying to become. Ask yourself, what patterns am I working on? What will today require of me? How do I want to show up? This simple practice frames your entire day. It puts you in the driver's seat. It reminds you that you have a choice in how you respond to whatever comes. The second practice is the evening review. Seneca recommended this strongly. Each night, before sleep, review your day, not with judgment or harsh criticism, but with honest observation. Where did I act in accordance with my values? Where did I fall short? Where did I react instead of respond? Where did I let weakness guide me instead of strength? What can I learn from today? What will I do differently tomorrow? This practice serves multiple purposes. It builds self-awareness, which is the foundation of all change. You cannot change what you do not notice. It reinforces your values by evaluating your actions against them. It identifies patterns so you can address them systematically, and it creates accountability. When you know you will review your day in the evening, you are more conscious during the day. You catch yourself in moments of weakness and make different choices because you do not want to face yourself in the evening and admit that you failed again in the same way. The third practice is negative visualization, what the Stoics called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. This is not pessimism, it is preparation. You imagine the things that could go wrong, not to worry about them, but to prepare yourself mentally so they do not devastate you if they occur. You imagine losing your job. How would you handle it? What would you do? You imagine conflict with someone you care about. How would you respond? You imagine failure in something you are attempting. How would you recover? This practice removes the power of fear. Most of what you fear loses its power when you face it directly, when you imagine it clearly and realize that even in the worst case scenario, you would survive, you would adapt, you would find a way forward. The weak man avoids thinking about potential problems because he wants to believe everything will be fine. The strong man thinks about potential problems specifically so he can prepare for them, so he can respond with wisdom rather than panic if they occur. The fourth practice is voluntary discomfort. We discussed this earlier, but it deserves emphasis because it is one of the most powerful tools for building resilience. Once a week, or even once a day, choose some form of discomfort. Take a cold shower, fast for a day, sleep on the floor. Go for a run when you do not want to. Have the difficult conversation you have been avoiding. Do the task you have been putting off. The purpose is not suffering for its own sake. The purpose is to prove to yourself that you can handle discomfort, that it will not kill you, that you are stronger than your desire for comfort. Each time you voluntarily choose discomfort and survive it, you weaken the power of comfort over you. You demonstrate to yourself that you are not controlled by circumstances, by feelings, by preferences. You are capable of choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. The fifth practice is mindful attention to your thoughts. This is perhaps the most important practice because your thoughts determine everything else. Throughout the day, practice noticing your thoughts without being carried away by them. When a negative thought arises, I am not good enough. Pause. Observe it. Say to yourself, I notice I am thinking I am not good enough. Where did that thought come from? Is it true? Is it useful? Do I want to believe it? This creates space between you and your thoughts. Most men are their thoughts. When they think something, they believe it automatically. But you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind the thoughts, the observer of the thoughts. And once you create this separation, you gain power. You can choose which thoughts to feed and which to release. You can question thoughts rather than accepting them. You can direct your attention rather than having your attention hijacked by every passing mental event. The sixth practice is intentional action toward your goals. Every day, regardless of how you feel, take at least one action that moves you toward the life you want. If you want to be healthy, do one healthy thing. If you want to build a business, do one business thing. If you want better relationships, reach out to one person. It does not have to be big. In fact, small is often better because it is sustainable. But it must be consistent. This practice builds momentum. It creates evidence that you are not just thinking about change, but actually changing. It reinforces your identity as someone who follows through, who takes action, who does not just talk, but acts. And over time, these small daily actions compound into major transformations. The man who writes 200 words every day has written a book in a year. The man who does 10 push-ups every day has built significant strength in a year. The man who reads 10 pages every day has read 12 books in a year. Small actions, repeated consistently, create extraordinary results. The seventh practice is seeking feedback from wise sources. The weak man avoids feedback because it might hurt his ego. The strong man seeks feedback because he values growth over ego protection. But not all feedback is valuable. Feedback from people who are not where you want to be, who do not share your values, who do not want your success. That feedback should be ignored. But feedback from mentors, from people who have achieved what you want to achieve, from those who genuinely care about your growth, that feedback is gold. Find these people. Ask them to tell you the truth about where you are falling short, not to shame you, but to help you see your blind spots. We all have them. There are patterns in your behavior that everyone else can see, but you cannot. The only way to address them is to hear about them from sources you trust. And when you receive this feedback, do not defend, do not explain, do not justify. Simply listen. Say thank you, reflect on whether it is true, and if it is, make changes. The 8th practice is regular exposure to Stoic philosophy. Read Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, read Epictetus's Discourses, read Seneca's letters. Not once, but repeatedly. These texts were meant to be lived with, to be returned to again and again. Each time you read them, you are at a different place in your life, facing different challenges, and different passages will speak to you. Make it a practice to spend at least 15 minutes a day reading Stoic philosophy. Let these ancient voices remind you of what matters, of how to think, of how to face life's challenges with wisdom and virtue. This is not about becoming a scholar, it is about having a conversation with wisdom. When you read Marcus Aurelius reminding himself not to worry about the opinions of others, you are reminded of the same principle. When you read Epictetus explaining the dichotomy of control, you are reminded to focus your energy on what you can influence. When you read Seneca discussing the shortness of life, you are reminded not to waste time on trivialities. These reminders keep you anchored, they prevent drift, they call you back to your principles when the world tries to pull you away. The 9th practice is memento mori, remember death. The Stoics kept death constantly in mind, not to be morbid, but to be present. When you remember that your time is limited, that you will die, that everyone you love will die, that all of this is temporary, you stop wasting time on nonsense. You stop holding grudges. You stop putting off what matters. You stop living on autopilot. You wake up to the preciousness of each moment, each interaction, each opportunity. This practice transforms how you spend your time. The weak man acts as if he has forever, so he wastes today and plans to start living tomorrow. The strong man remembers he could die at any moment, so he lives fully today. He says what needs to be said. He does what needs to be done. He loves openly. He acts with purpose, not frantically but intentionally, because he knows that this moment right now is all he has. The 10th practice, and perhaps the most challenging, is to regularly examine and potentially end relationships or commitments that are not aligned with your growth. The weak man stays in situations that diminish him because he is afraid of change, afraid of disappointing others, afraid of being alone. The strong man understands that your environment shapes you powerfully, and if your environment is toxic, if the people around you mock your ambitions, enable your weaknesses, and pull you toward mediocrity, then no amount of personal effort will overcome that gravity. This does not mean abandoning everyone at the first sign of conflict. It means honestly assessing, are the people in my life supporting my growth or preventing it? Are they calling me higher or pulling me lower? Are they celebrating my progress or resenting it? And if the answer is consistently negative, you must have the courage to create distance, to say no, to protect your environment, because you become like the people you spend time with. If you spend time with disciplined people, you become more disciplined. If you spend time with complainers, you become a complainer. Choose wisely. Now let us address the internal resistance you are likely feeling, because as you read these patterns, as you recognize yourself in them, as you consider the practices that could change your life, there is a voice in your head offering reasons why this will not work for you. This voice is clever. It does not say, I want to stay weak. It says things that sound reasonable, rational, even wise. It says, this is too hard. It says, I am too far gone. It says, I will start next week, next month, when things settle down. It says, this works for other people, but my situation is different. This voice is the voice of the weak self, the habitual self, the self that is terrified of change because change means the death of the identity you have been carrying. And even if that identity is painful, even if it is limiting, it is familiar, and the human psyche clings to the familiar even when the familiar is destroying it. This is why most men never change, not because they do not know what to do. They know. Deep down, they know exactly what needs to change, but knowing is not enough. Knowledge must overcome resistance. Understanding must become action, and that requires something more than information. It requires decision, it requires commitment, it requires the willingness to die to your old self so your new self can be born. The Stoics understood this internal war. Marcus Aurelius wrote constantly about the battle between his higher self and his lower impulses. He wrote reminders to himself to get out of bed, to do his duty, to not give in to the temptation to take the easy path. And this was the Emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the world. If he struggled with these same patterns, if he needed to remind himself daily not to be weak, then you are not alone in this struggle. Every man faces it. The difference is whether you acknowledge it and fight, or whether you pretend it is not happening and surrender. Let us dismantle the most common forms of resistance. The first is, I am too old to change. This is a lie. Yes, habits become more ingrained with age. Yes, neuroplasticity decreases somewhat as you get older, but people change at every age. There are men who transformed their lives at 40, at 50, at 60. There are men who discovered strength and purpose late in life and built something meaningful with the years they had left. Age is a factor, but it is not a disqualifier. The only thing that makes you too old to change is the belief that you are too old to change. And that belief is a choice. The second form of resistance is, I have tried before and failed. Yes, you have. Everyone who has ever attempted significant change has failed, probably multiple times. Failure is not evidence that you cannot succeed. It is evidence that you are trying. The question is not whether you have failed before. The question is whether you learned from those failures. Did you understand why you failed? Did you identify what went wrong? Or did you just repeat the same approach and expect different results? Each failure is information. It tells you what does not work. It reveals weaknesses in your strategy, gaps in your preparation, patterns you had not yet identified. The weak man sees failure as proof of his inadequacy. The strong man sees failure as tuition paid in the school of experience. He welcomes it, learns from it, adjusts, and tries again. He understands that the path to success is not a straight line. It is a series of attempts, failures, adjustments, and gradual progress. The only true failure is quitting. The third form of resistance is, I do not have time. This is perhaps the most common excuse, and it is almost always false. What you mean when you say you do not have time is that you have not made it a priority. You have time for what you prioritize. You find time for what matters to you. If your health, your growth, your transformation mattered as much as your job, your entertainment, your distractions, you would find time. The truth is that building strength, practicing STOIC principles, working on these patterns, none of this requires massive amounts of time. 15 minutes of morning meditation, 15 minutes of evening review, 15 minutes of reading. That is 45 minutes total. If you claim you do not have 45 minutes in a day, you are lying to yourself. The fourth form of resistance is, my circumstances are uniquely difficult. Maybe they are. Maybe you are dealing with challenges that others are not. But this does not exempt you from responsibility for your response. This does not mean you get to stay weak. In fact, difficult circumstances are precisely where Stoic principles are most valuable. Epictetus was a slave. Viktor Frankl was in a concentration camp. James Stockdale was a prisoner of war. All of them found strength, maintained their integrity, and even grew through circumstances far more difficult than what you are facing. Their external circumstances were terrible, but their internal freedom remained intact because they focused on what was within their control. Your circumstances are not your destiny. They are the raw material with which you build your destiny. Yes, some people have easier raw material. Some people are born into wealth, health, stability, opportunity. That is fortune, and fortune is outside your control. What is within your control is what you do with what you have been given. The strong man does not compare his circumstances to others. He does not waste energy wishing things were different. He accepts what is and works with it. He plays the hand he has been dealt to the best of his ability, and often he surprises himself with what becomes possible. The fifth form of resistance is, I will start when I feel ready. You will never feel ready. Readiness is not a feeling, it is a decision. You decide to start, and through starting, you become ready. Think about anything significant you have ever done in your life. Did you feel ready before you started? Or did you feel terrified, uncertain, inadequate, and you started anyway, and then you figured it out as you went? That is how it works. That is how it has always worked. The feeling of readiness is a mirage. It is the weak self's way of keeping you safe, keeping you small, keeping you from taking the risk of growth, because growth is uncertain. You might fail, you might look foolish, you might discover that it is harder than you thought, but you might also succeed. You might become stronger. You might build a life you are proud of. The only way to find out is to start. Not next week, not when you finish this book, not when you have thought about it more. now, today, with the next decision you make. The sixth form of resistance is the subtle belief that you do not deserve to be strong, that somehow your past mistakes or current weaknesses mean you should remain weak. This is self-punishment disguised as humility. It is not humility. Humility is acknowledging your weaknesses while still striving to improve. Self-punishment is using your weaknesses as an excuse to stop trying, as permission to stay stuck. You do not need to deserve strength to pursue it. Strength is not a reward for past virtue. It is available to anyone willing to practice, to struggle, to grow. The Stoics believed that every human has the capacity for virtue, for wisdom, for strength, not because we earn it, but because it is part of our nature. You have reason, you have will, you have choice. These capacities are inherent. The question is whether you develop them or neglect them, and developing them is not about being worthy. It is about being willing. Willing to face yourself honestly, willing to do the work, willing to persist through difficulty. That is all. No moral perfection required, just willingness. The seventh form of resistance is comparing yourself to others and concluding that you are too far behind to catch up. You see people who are stronger, more disciplined, more successful, and you think, I could never be like that. The gap is too large, but this comparison is meaningless. You are not competing with them. You are not trying to be them. You are trying to be the best version of yourself. And the best version of yourself is always within reach, always just one choice away. Stop measuring yourself against others. Measure yourself against yourself. Are you stronger today than you were last month? Are you more disciplined, more honest, more courageous? That is the only metric that matters. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world, still measured himself against his own principles, not against others. He did not ask, am I better than other emperors? He asked, am I living up to my own values? That is the right question. The eighth form of resistance is the belief that you are inherently weak, that this is just who you are, that you cannot change your fundamental nature. This is the most insidious resistance because it masquerades as self-knowledge. I am just not a disciplined person. I have always been weak-willed. I am not built for this. But these are not truths about your nature. These are stories you have told yourself, stories that have become self-fulfilling prophecies because you believe them and therefore act accordingly. You are not your past. You are not your habits. You are not your current patterns. These are things you have done, not things you are, and anything you have done you can do differently. The weak man identifies with his weakness. I am weak. The strong man sees weakness as behavior that can be changed. I have acted weakly and I can act differently. This distinction is everything. One perspective is a prison, the other is a doorway. The Stoics rejected the idea of fixed character. They believed in the capacity for constant improvement, for development, for transformation. Seneca wrote, "No one is born wise, but we can all become wise." The same is true for strength. No one is born strong. Strength is developed through practice, through challenge, through repeated choice. You are not trapped by your nature. You are shaped by your choices. And your next choice can be different from all the previous ones. Let us now explore what your life looks like when you overcome these patterns, when you consistently choose strength over weakness, when you embody Stoic principles not as philosophy, but as lived reality. This is not fantasy. This is the natural result of the practices we have discussed, applied consistently over time. This is what becomes possible when you stop making excuses and start making progress. The strong man wakes with purpose. He does not dread the day. He does not hit snooze repeatedly, stealing a few more minutes of unconsciousness to avoid facing his life. He rises intentionally, often before he has to, because he has designed a morning routine that anchors him. He sits in meditation, reviewing his principles, preparing his mind. He moves his body, reminding himself that he is physical, that he is strong, that he is capable. He feeds his mind with wisdom, reading philosophy or reflecting on his values. And he enters his day not reactively, not scattered, but centered, focused, clear about what matters. His day is not controlled by external demands. Yes, he has responsibilities, commitments, obligations, but he meets them from a place of strength. When challenges arise, and they always do, he does not panic. He does not collapse. He pauses, assesses, responds. When people are difficult, he does not take it personally. He understands that their behavior is about them, not about him. When plans fall through, he adapts. He is like water, flowing around obstacles rather than crashing against them and shattering. His relationships are honest. He has eliminated the people who drain him, who enable his worst tendencies, who resent his growth. He has kept and deepened relationships with people who challenge him, who support him, who want his success. And within these relationships, he is authentic. He says what he means what he says. He does not pretend. He does not perform. He is simply himself, strong enough to be vulnerable, secure enough to admit when he is wrong, humble enough to ask for help. He has difficult conversations when they are needed, not with aggression, not with cruelty, but with honesty and respect. He addresses problems early, before they become crises. He tells people what they need to hear, not just what they want to hear. And because he does this, his relationships are real. There is trust, there is depth, there is mutual respect. People know where they stand with him. They know he will not lie to protect their feelings or his comfort. They know he values truth over false peace. His work is meaningful, maybe not in the sense that he has found the perfect career, though he might have, but in the sense that he approaches his work with excellence. He does not do the minimum. He does not complain constantly. He does not blame his boss, his co-workers, his circumstances for his dissatisfaction. He takes ownership. He looks for ways to add value. He develops skills. He builds mastery, and if he is in the wrong position, if his work genuinely does not align with his values, he does not just complain. He makes a plan to change it. He takes action. He either transforms the situation or exits it, but he does not stay and suffer while blaming external forces. His health is a priority, not an afterthought. He trains his body regularly, not for vanity, but for vitality, for strength, for the discipline that physical training develops. He eats well, not perfectly, but consciously, understanding that his body is the vehicle through which he experiences life, and that abusing it has consequences. He sleeps adequately, protecting his rest because he understands that without it, everything else deteriorates. He does not sacrifice his health for his career, for entertainment, for anything, because he understands that health is the foundation. Without it, nothing else matters. His mind is sharp because he feeds it properly. He reads, not just for entertainment, but for growth. He exposes himself to challenging ideas. He learns new skills. He protects his attention from the endless distractions of modern life. He uses technology as a tool rather than being used by it. He is selective about what he allows into his consciousness, understanding that what you consume mentally shapes you just as surely as what you consume physically. He has financial stability, not necessarily wealth, but stability. He lives below his means, he saves, he invests. He avoids debt except for truly strategic purposes. He does not compare his lifestyle to others. He does not need the latest possessions to feel valuable. He understands that wealth is not about how much you earn, but about how much you keep and what you do with it. He is building security, building options, building freedom, not frantically, not obsessively, but steadily, patiently, as part of his larger life strategy. He has a practice, a daily set of rituals that keep him grounded. Maybe it is meditation, maybe it is journaling, maybe it is a morning walk, maybe it is all of these. But he has something that he returns to every day, something that reconnects him to what matters, that reminds him of his principles, that pulls him out of the reactive chaos of life and back into intentional presence. This practice is non-negotiable. He protects it because he has learned that when he neglects it, he drifts, and drift is the enemy of the strong man. He fails, but he does not collapse. Things go wrong, projects fail, relationships end, mistakes are made. But these events do not destroy him because his worth is not tied to external outcomes. He evaluates, what can I learn from this? Where did I fall short? What will I do differently? And then he moves forward. He does not wallow. He does not make failure part of his identity. He treats it as information, extracts the lesson, and continues on his path. He is respected, but he does not need to be. People respect him because he is competent, because he is honest, because he is consistent, because his actions align with his words. But his behavior is not motivated by the pursuit of respect. He does not do the right thing because he wants people to think well of him. He does it because it aligns with his values. And this makes the respect he receives genuine rather than the result of performance or manipulation. He is at peace. Not because his life is perfect, not because he has no problems, but because he has accepted that life is difficult and that his task is not to eliminate difficulty, but to meet it with virtue. He does not expect life to be easy. He does not feel victimized by challenges. He understands that difficulty is the forge in which character is made, that obstacles are opportunities, that every challenge is a chance to practice his principles. This peace is not passive. It is not the peace of the man who has given up, who has stopped trying, who has numbed himself. It is the peace of the man who is fully engaged with life but not controlled by it, who cares deeply but is not attached to outcomes, who strives mightily but accepts whatever results. who lives with passion but also with equanimity. He helps others, not from obligation but from overflow. Because he has done the work on himself, because he has become strong, he naturally extends that strength to those around him. He mentors, he supports, he encourages, he shares what he has learned, not because he is trying to be a good person, not because he is seeking approval, but because this is what strong men do. They lift others, they create value, they contribute, they make the world around them better by their presence. He ages with dignity. As his body weakens with time, as opportunities close, as death approaches, he does not rage against reality. He does not desperately cling to youth, to relevance, to the past. He accepts the natural cycle. He has lived fully, so he can release fully. He has built a life of meaning, so death is not terrifying. It is simply the next step. And in his final years, he is not bitter, not resentful, not filled with regrets about what he did not do. He is grateful for what was, accepting of what is, and at peace with what will be. This is the life that becomes possible when you eliminate the 15 patterns of weakness. This is what you are building toward with every right choice, every difficult conversation, every morning meditation, every moment of discipline. This life is not reserved for a special few. It is not about talent, luck, or circumstances. It is about choice, repeated consistently over time. It is about becoming the architect of your character rather than the victim of your habits. And the beautiful thing is that you do not have to wait until you have eliminated all weakness to begin experiencing these benefits. Every step towards strength improves your life immediately. The day you start taking responsibility instead of blaming, your relationships improve. The day you start seeking discomfort instead of avoiding it, your confidence grows. The day you start controlling your thoughts instead of being controlled by them, your peace increases. The benefits are not delayed until some future perfect version of yourself emerges. They begin now with your next choice. But let us be honest about the cost, because there is a cost. Choosing strength over weakness is not free. It requires sacrifice. It requires giving up things that feel good, that feel safe, that feel comfortable. And if you are not willing to pay this cost, then all the philosophy in the world will not help you. You will remain as you are, reading about transformation but never experiencing it, understanding the path but never walking it. The first cost is the death of your excuses. You can have excuses or you can have results. You cannot have both. When you commit to strength, you give up the right to blame your circumstances, your past, your limitations. You give up the comfortable narrative that absolves you of responsibility. You give up the victim story that explains why you are where you are. This is painful because excuses serve a function. They protect your ego. They explain away your failures. They allow you to maintain a positive self-image even while living a mediocre life. When you release them, you are left naked before the truth. You are responsible for your life. And that truth is heavy. The second cost is the loss of certain relationships. When you start changing, when you start refusing to participate in complaints, in gossip, in mediocrity, some people in your life will not like it. They will feel judged by your growth even though you are not judging them. They will try to pull you back down, to mock your efforts, to tempt you back into old patterns, and you will have to create distance. You will have to say no. You will have to let go of relationships that you thought were important, but that were actually holding you back. This is painful. Loneliness is a real cost of growth, but it is temporary. As you become stronger, you attract different people. Better people, people who are on the same path. But the transition period can be isolating. The third cost is the loss of comfort. You cannot build strength while remaining comfortable. The two are incompatible. Comfort is seductive. It whispers that you have done enough, that you deserve rest, that you can skip today and start again tomorrow. And choosing strength means saying no to that whisper again and again. It means choosing the cold shower over the warm bed. It means choosing the difficult conversation over silent resentment. It means choosing the workout over the couch. Every single day, you are choosing discomfort, and there is no point at which this becomes completely easy. You get stronger, so you can handle more discomfort, but you are always operating at the edge of your capacity. That is where growth happens. The fourth cost is the loss of distraction. Modern life offers infinite ways to numb yourself, to escape, to avoid being present with your thoughts and feelings. Entertainment, social media, substances, food, shopping, gaming, the list is endless, and all of these distractions are designed to be addictive, to capture your attention, to keep you consuming. When you commit to strength, You have to give up most of this, not because distraction is evil, but because it is incompatible with the focused attention required for growth. You have to sit with yourself. You have to face boredom. You have to endure the discomfort of being alone with your mind. And initially, this is excruciating. Your mind will scream for stimulation. But over time, you discover a peace in presence that no distraction could ever provide. The fifth cost is the loss of the fantasy of who you could be. The weak man lives in potential. He tells himself that he could be great if circumstances were different, if he tried, if he really put in the effort. This fantasy is comforting because it allows him to feel superior without actually doing anything. But when you commit to actually becoming strong, you have to test yourself against reality. You have to try. And in trying, you discover your actual limits, not your imagined limits. You discover that some things are harder than you thought, that you are not as naturally talented as you believed, that you will have to work harder and longer than you hoped. You trade the fantasy of unlimited potential for the reality of actual achievement. And reality is harder, but it is also more satisfying. The sixth cost is time. Building strength takes time. Time that could be spent on leisure, on entertainment, on pleasure. Every morning you spend in meditation is a morning you are not spending sleeping in. Every evening you spend reviewing your day is an evening you are not spending watching shows. Every hour you spend reading philosophy or working on your goals is an hour you are not spending on immediate gratification. You are trading present pleasure for future results. And this trade requires faith because the results are not immediate. You will not see dramatic changes tomorrow. You might not see them next month. But if you persist, if you stay consistent, the compounding effect becomes undeniable. Still, you have to be willing to invest the time without guaranteed returns. The seventh cost is the loss of the false self. You have been playing roles, wearing masks, presenting versions of yourself designed to win approval, to avoid rejection, to maintain safety. These false selves have to die. The authentic you, the strong you, cannot emerge while you are still hiding behind performance. And allowing the false self to die is terrifying because you do not know if anyone will accept the real you. You do not know if the real you is worthy. But you discover through the process that authenticity is its own reward, that living as yourself, even if some people reject you, is infinitely better than living as a carefully managed image, even if everyone approves. The eighth cost is the loss of certainty. The weak man, despite his weakness, has a certain kind of security. He knows who he is, he knows his patterns, he knows what to expect. Changing means entering uncertainty. You do not know who you will become. You do not know if the process will work. You do not know what challenges will arise. You are stepping into the unknown, and humans are wired to avoid uncertainty, to prefer the known bad over the unknown possibility of good. So choosing strength means choosing to be uncertain, to be vulnerable, to accept that you cannot control outcomes. You can only control effort. The ninth cost is the loss of instant gratification. Everything worthwhile takes time. Strength is not built in a day. Wisdom is not achieved in a week. Character is not developed in a month. You have to delay gratification. You have to invest in processes that will not pay off immediately. You have to trust that small daily actions will compound into significant results. But modern life has conditioned you for instant gratification. You want it now. You want to see results immediately. And when you do not, you quit. So committing to strength means reconditioning yourself for patience, for delayed gratification, for faith in the process. The 10th cost is the loss of the right to complain. When you take full responsibility for your life, when you acknowledge that you are choosing your responses, when you recognize that you have agency, even in difficult circumstances, you lose the right to complain. Complaining becomes nonsensical. You cannot simultaneously claim you are responsible and also complain about your situation. Either you accept responsibility and take action, or you give up responsibility and complain. The strong man chooses the former, and this means he gives up the bonding that happens through shared complaints, the connection that comes from mutual victimhood. He can no longer participate in that. He stands apart. These costs are real. They are significant, and if you are not willing to pay them, you should not start this path. Because starting and quitting is worse than never starting. Starting and quitting reinforces the belief that you cannot change, that you are weak, that you will always fail. It is better to be honest with yourself. I am not willing to pay the cost, so I will not begin. At least that is honest. At least you are not lying to yourself. But if you are willing to pay the cost, if you look at everything you have to give up and decide that what you gain is worth it, then you are ready. Then you can begin. And once you begin, once you start seeing the benefits, once you feel yourself becoming stronger, more capable, more at peace, you realize that the cost was not a cost at all. It was a trade. You traded what was heavy for what was light. You traded what was false for what was true. You traded a life of comfort for a life of meaning, and you would never go back. Now we come to the question you must answer. Who do you want to be? Not who you should be according to society, your parents, your friends. Not who you could be in some idealized fantasy. Who do you actually want to be? What kind of man do you want to become? And more importantly, are you willing to do what that becoming requires? This question cannot be answered lightly. It cannot be answered with vague aspirations or platitudes. I want to be successful. What does that mean? I want to be happy. How will you define that? I want to be a good person. According to whose standards? You must get specific. You must define your values, your principles, the virtues you want to embody. You must create a clear image of the man you are building yourself into. Because if you do not know where you are going, any path will take you there, which means you will wander, you will drift, you will end up wherever circumstances take you rather than where you chose to go. The Stoics were clear about their values. They defined the 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. Every action was evaluated against these standards. Am I acting wisely? Am I being just? Am I demonstrating courage? Am I practicing temperance? These questions provided clarity. They provided a compass, and you need the same. You need to define clearly and specifically what you stand for. What principles guide your decisions? What virtues do you aspire to embody? What kind of man do you want to be in your relationships, in your work, in your private moments when no one is watching? Write this down. Do not just think about it. Write it. Create a personal philosophy, a document that defines your values, your principles, your vision for yourself. Review it regularly. Revise it as you grow and learn. But have it, because this document becomes your North Star. When you are faced with a choice, when you are tempted toward weakness, when you are unsure what to do, you consult your philosophy. You ask, what does the man I am becoming do in this situation? And then you do that, regardless of how you feel. This is the Stoic practice of having a philosophical framework that guides action. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is essentially his personal philosophy, written as reminders to himself. Epictetus taught his students to develop their own principles and live by them. Seneca wrote letters explaining his values and how he applied them. They understood that without a clear philosophy, you are reactive, inconsistent, pulled in whatever direction circumstances or emotions take you. But with a clear philosophy, you have stability, consistency, direction. Your philosophy should address the 15 patterns we discussed. For each one, define the opposite, the strength you want to build. Instead of blaming, I take responsibility. Instead of seeking validation, I define my own worth. Instead of living in the past, I focus on the present. Instead of avoiding discomfort, I embrace it. Instead of being controlled by desires, I master them. Instead of lacking discipline, I practice it daily. Instead of fearing failure, I learn from it. Instead of seeking shortcuts, I commit to the process. Instead of living for approval, I live by my values. Instead of avoiding difficult conversations, I have them. Instead of neglecting growth, I pursue it constantly. Instead of being a slave to comfort, I choose challenge. Instead of reacting, I respond. Instead of being controlled by thoughts, I direct them. Instead of overthinking, I take action. Write these out, make them specific to your life, your challenges, your circumstances, and then commit to reviewing them every day, morning and evening. Let them sink into your consciousness. Let them become not just ideas you agree with, but truths you live by. This is how transformation happens, not through a single moment of insight, but through repeated exposure to truth until that truth becomes part of you. And as you do this, as you work on these patterns, as you practice these principles, be patient with yourself. Change is not linear. You will have good days and bad days. You will make progress and then regress. You will feel strong and then feel weak again. This is normal. This is part of the process. The Stoics did not expect perfection. They expected effort, consistency, commitment to the practice. Marcus Aurelius wrote often about his failures, his mistakes, his ongoing struggles. He did not claim to have arrived at some final state of wisdom. He was in process, always in process, until the day he died. You are in process too. And that is fine. The goal is not to become perfect. The goal is to become better, consistently, over time. To look back over a month, a year, 5 years, and see clear progress. To recognize that you are not the same man you were, that you have grown, that you have become stronger, wiser, more capable. That is success. Not perfection, but progress. As you progress, as you become stronger, you will notice something interesting. The world will test you. Circumstances will arise that challenge your new patterns. The universe seems to present opportunities to fall back into old behaviors. Do not be surprised by this. Do not interpret it as punishment or as evidence that you are failing. Interpret it as training. Each challenge is an opportunity to practice your new way of being, to prove to yourself that you have changed, to reinforce your new identity. When someone tries to provoke you and you respond with calm, you have practiced response over reaction. When you face failure and you extract the lesson without collapsing, you have practiced resilience. When you feel the pull of comfort and you choose discipline instead, you have practiced strength. Every challenge is a repetition in the gym of character building. Welcome them. They are making you stronger. And as you become stronger, as these practices become ingrained, as your new identity solidifies, something remarkable happens. The practices that once required enormous willpower become natural. The choices that once felt difficult become automatic. You do not have to force yourself to take responsibility. It is simply how you operate. You do not have to remind yourself to be disciplined. Discipline is who you are. The external practices have become internal character, and this is the ultimate goal. Not to follow rules, but to become the kind of person for whom right action is natural. This is what the Stoics called the sage, the wise man, the person who has fully integrated virtue into their being. They acknowledged that the sage is rare, perhaps even theoretical, but the pursuit of becoming a sage, the journey toward wisdom and strength that is available to everyone, and even if you never reach perfect wisdom, even if you struggle with weakness until your last breath, the struggle itself is valuable. The effort itself is worthy, because you are living intentionally, you are growing, you are becoming more than you were, and that is a life well lived. Consider the alternative. Consider the man who never tries, who accepts weakness as inevitable, who lives reactively, who reaches the end of his life full of regrets, full of what-ifs, full of the knowledge that he never even attempted to become who he could have been. That is the real tragedy. Not failure, but never trying, not falling short, but never aiming high, not being weak, but accepting weakness and calling it wisdom or realism or just how things are. You have a choice. Right now, in this moment, you have a choice. You can close this book, return to your patterns, continue as you have been, and hope that somehow things will change on their own. Or you can decide. You can commit. You can take the first step on the path from weakness to strength, from reaction to response, from drift to direction. The path is long, it is difficult, it requires everything we have discussed: responsibility, discipline, discomfort, honesty, growth, action. But it is the path to a life you can be proud of, to a self you can respect, to a strength that cannot be taken from you. Let us speak plainly about the moment you are in. You have reached the end of these words, but you stand at the beginning of everything else. This is the pivotal moment. This is where most men fail, not because they do not understand, not because they are incapable, but because they do not decide. They read, they nod, they agree, and then they return to their lives unchanged. They treat wisdom like entertainment, something to consume and forget. Do not be that man. The Stoics understood that knowledge without action is worthless. Epictetus would become angry with students who could recite philosophy perfectly but lived no differently than fools. What is the point, he would ask, of knowing the right thing if you do not do it? What value is there in understanding virtue if you do not practice it? Philosophy is not a spectator sport. It is a way of life, and that way begins with decision. Right now, before you move on to the next thing, before you allow these ideas to fade into the background noise of your mind, make a decision. Choose one pattern, just one, from the 15 we discussed. Choose the one that resonates most strongly, the one where you know with absolute certainty that this is holding you back. Maybe it is the lack of discipline. Maybe it is seeking constant validation. Maybe it is avoiding discomfort. Whatever it is, choose it. Now commit to working on just that one pattern for the next 30 days. Not forever, which feels overwhelming. Just 30 days. Commit to one specific practice that addresses this pattern. If you chose lack of discipline, commit to waking at the same time every day, no matter what. If you chose seeking validation, commit to making one decision each day based purely on your values, regardless of what others might think. If you chose avoiding discomfort, commit to one deliberate act of discomfort daily: a cold shower, a difficult conversation, an extra set at the gym. Make it specific, make it measurable, make it daily, and write it down. Do not just think it, do not just intend it, write it. For the next 30 days, I will specific action every day. Put it somewhere you will see it every morning. Put it on your mirror, your phone background, your desk. Let it be a constant reminder of your commitment. And then, most importantly, start today. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when you feel ready. Today. As soon as you finish reading this, take the first action. If your commitment is waking early, set your alarm right now. If it is cold showers, go take one right now. If it is a difficult conversation, text the person right now to schedule it. Take immediate action, because action creates momentum and momentum creates more action. But if you wait, if you delay, resistance will grow. Tomorrow, you will have less motivation than today. Next week, you will have forgotten. The only moment you have is now. And when you start, expect it to be hard. Expect resistance. Expect your mind to offer every excuse, every rationalization, every reason why today should be an exception. I did not sleep well. I will start fresh on Monday. This is too hard. One day does not matter. These thoughts will come. They are not evidence that you should stop. They are evidence that you are changing, that you are pushing against ingrained patterns, that you are growing. The resistance is a sign you are on the right path. When these thoughts arise, and they will, do not argue with them. Do not try to convince yourself. Simply act despite them. You do not need to feel motivated. You do not need to feel ready. You just need to do the thing you committed to doing. Motivation follows action more often than action follows motivation. You start and then you feel better about starting. You do not wait to feel better and then start. Keep a record. Each day, after you complete your committed action, mark it. Put an X on a calendar. Write a sentence in a journal. Create a visual record of your consistency. This serves multiple purposes. It creates accountability. It builds momentum. You will not want to break the chain of consecutive days. And it provides evidence of your capability. When you doubt yourself, when you feel weak, you can look at the record and see, I did this for 20 days straight. I am capable. I am changing. At the end of 30 days, pause and evaluate. How do you feel? What has changed? What have you learned about yourself? Do not expect perfection. You will have missed days. You will have struggled. That is fine. The question is, are you different than you were 30 days ago? Even a small change is significant. Even 1% better is progress. And if you have maintained any consistency at all, if you have done the practice more days than you have missed it, you have proven something crucial to yourself. You can change. You are not trapped. You are capable of choosing new patterns. Then choose another pattern, or deepen your work on the first one. Continue for another 30 days, then another. Slowly, pattern by pattern, practice by practice, you rebuild yourself. Not overnight, not dramatically, but steadily, surely, with the patient persistence that the Stoics embodied. Remember, Seneca spent his entire life practicing Stoic philosophy. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations in his 50s, still reminding himself of principles he had been practicing for decades. This is not a quick fix. This is a life's work. But it is work that makes life worth living. And as you do this work, as you progress, share what you learn. Not to boast, not to seek validation, but to help others. The strong man lifts others. He does not hoard his wisdom. He does not gatekeep his growth. He shares openly, knowing that teaching reinforces learning, that helping others helps himself. When you explain to someone else what you are learning, you understand it more deeply. When you encourage someone else to be strong, you strengthen yourself. When you become an example of what is possible, you commit more fully to the path. But do not evangelize, do not preach, do not try to convince people who are not ready. The Stoics understood that wisdom cannot be forced on anyone. People must come to it in their own time, through their own pain, through their own recognition that something needs to change. Your job is not to convert others. Your job is to live so well, with such integrity and peace and strength, that others become curious. How are you so calm? How did you make that change? What are you doing differently? Those questions are invitations. Answer them honestly. Share what is working for you, but do not try to drag people onto the path. Focus on walking it yourself. As you walk this path, as the years pass, as strength becomes your default, you will look back with gratitude. Not gratitude that life was easy, because it will not have been. Not gratitude that everything went according to plan, because it will not have. But gratitude that you chose to be strong, that you refused to accept weakness, that you took responsibility for your transformation. You will look at the man you were and recognize him, but you will also see how far you have come. And that recognition is deeply satisfying in a way that external achievements never are, because external achievements are fragile. They depend on circumstances, on luck, on factors outside your control. The business can fail, the relationship can end, the health can deteriorate, but character once built cannot be taken from you. The strength you develop, the wisdom you cultivate, the virtue you embody, these are yours forever. Even if you lose everything else, you keep these. Even if circumstances destroy all your external possessions, you remain internally rich. This is what the Stoics meant when they said virtue is the only true good. Everything else is fortune, and fortune is fickle, but character is yours. So build character. Build it deliberately, daily, relentlessly. Build it in small moments when no one is watching. Build it in large challenges when everyone is watching. Build it through failure and through success, through difficulty and through ease. Build it because it is the only thing truly worth building. Build it because you deserve to become the man you are capable of being. Build it because the world needs strong men, men who take responsibility, who speak truth, who face challenges with courage, who live with integrity. Build it because your future self will thank you. Imagine him now, that future self, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, at the end of your life. Imagine him looking back at this moment, at the decision you make right now. What does he want you to do? Does he want you to stay comfortable, to stay weak, to stay trapped in patterns that you know are destroying you? Or does he want you to start, to struggle, to grow, to become the man he is? You know the answer, and he is counting on you. The you of today is creating the you of tomorrow. What will you create? The 15 patterns of weakness destroy futures. But they only destroy the futures of men who allow them to continue, who see their patterns clearly and choose to do nothing, who understand the path but refuse to walk it. You are not that man. If you were, you would not have read this far. You would have dismissed these ideas pages ago. The fact that you are here, now, reading these final words, means something. It means you are ready, or at least ready to become ready. It means you sense the possibility of transformation. It means you have not given up on yourself, even if you have been weak, even if you have failed before, even if you doubt your capability. That spark, that sense of possibility, that refusal to completely surrender to weakness, that is enough. That is all you need to begin. Fan that spark, protect it, feed it with action, watch it grow into a flame, a fire that burns away everything weak within you and forges something strong, something lasting, something worthy. This is your moment, this is your call. The ancient Stoics, dead for 2 millennia, are reaching across time to offer you their wisdom. They lived in different circumstances, faced different challenges, inhabited a different world. But human nature has not changed. The struggle between strength and weakness, between virtue and vice, between living with intention and drifting through life, that struggle is eternal, and their wisdom is still relevant, still practical, still true. Marcus Aurelius, on his deathbed, was asked if he had any regrets. He said no, not because his life was perfect, but because he had lived according to his principles. He had done his duty. He had practiced virtue. He had been the man he set out to be. Can you imagine that? Reaching the end of your life with no regrets, not because everything went well, but because you lived with integrity, because you became who you intended to become, because you did not waste your time in weakness, but spent it in growth. That is possible for you. Not guaranteed, but possible. And the possibility is enough. The possibility is everything, because it means you have agency. It means you have choice. It means that regardless of where you are now, regardless of how weak you have been, regardless of how much time you have wasted, you can start now. You can choose differently. You can begin the journey from weakness to strength. And that journey, that choice, that commitment, that is what makes you human in the fullest sense. So do not wait, do not hesitate, do not allow this moment to pass like all the others. Decide now, commit now, act now. Choose the man you want to become and take the first step toward him. Not next week, not tomorrow, now. Because now is all you have. The past is gone, the future is uncertain, but this moment right now, this is real, this is yours, this is where your power lives. Take it, use it, and become strong.